Hello everyone. So Introduction is back again with a new video, and today we are going to cover NCRT Class 6 Chapter 9, that is Vital Villages Thriving Towns. So Iron Tools and Agriculture. Do you know or can you recall from the earlier chapters where we have read about iron and what all we have read about iron? So as you can remember from the previous videos, that a major change took place in agriculture, and people began to use iron plowshare, and that iron plowshare actually increased the agricultural production. But can you or do you know that the very first existence of iron can be traced back to 3000 years ago, and its usage became more prevalent only about 2500 years ago. And so there are various iron tools that are used in several places and for several purposes. For example, axes are used for clearing the forest. Also, the iron plowshare were used for tilling the land, and also it increases the production. And what were the other steps that were used to increase the production other than the iron plowshare using the axes? So actually, the king and kingdom they needed the support of flourishing villages to exist, because we know that the king and kingdoms they existed in cities, okay, and in villages used to live the farmers and the herders and the hunters, okay, and they used to grow the crops. So the kings and kingdoms needed their support, okay. So the new tools and the systems of transplantations they came into existence, and these systems of transplantation, they increase the production. Other than that, irrigation was also used. So irrigation works began to be building during this time, like canals, wells, tanks, and artificial lakes. Okay, because we know earlier in the earliest of times, people used to live around the banks of the rivers like Narmada, Ganga Valley. So so people had the supply of the water. But when people started to have this sedentary kind of lifestyle and they started to settle down at one places, they need the supply of water. So and also they started growing crops. And in order to increase the production of crops, they started coming up with various ideas, like just we saw in forms of iron plowshares, a transplantation system came into existence, irrigation also. So for irrigation, they started building canals, wells, dams, and artificial. I hope it's clear. Moving ahead. So if these people, kings and kingdoms and merchants and traders are living in the cities, so who all are the people who are living in the village? So there were three different kinds of people who lived in the villages, and we are going to see it in the context of southern subcontinent and northern subcontinent. Okay, so in the southern subcontinent there were three kinds of people. One were large landowners, second were ordinary, and third were who were the landless laborers or slaves. Okay, so there was a particular name that was used for these owners of the land. So the large landowners in the southern subcontinent, they were called as Vellalar. Okay. And the ordinary plowmen were known as Udhavar. Whereas the landless laborers, including the slaves, they were known as Kadaisiyar and Adib. Okay. I hope it's clear. Let's talk about northern part of the subcontinent. So these northern parts of the subcontinent also had a headman, those village headmen were called as Gram Bhoj, and their position was hereditary, meaning that this position used to transfer from one generation to another. Okay, moving ahead. And this Gram Bhojat, he was the largest land, and he had his own slaves. He hired workers so that they can cultivate the land, and he was very powerful. And even kings used to appoint them so that they can collect the taxes from the village. And he also functioned as a judge and policeman. So when there is any kind of dispute that used to happen in villages, so he used to function as judge and policeman. And apart from the Gram Bhojak, there used to be independent farmers used to also be there. Okay, those who have their own land and they used to work independently and they are not working on some other people's land. Okay, and then there were small landowners, they were called as Grihapati. All right. And the men and women who did not have any land and they earned their living by working on the fields of others, they were known as Dasa Karmakar. Okay, there were also craft persons such as blacksmith, potter, carpenter, and weaver. They used to live in the village. All right, moving ahead. So there is one of the Tamil literature called as Sangam literature. First of all, why it is called Sangam? Because it was composed and it was compiled in the assembly of poets known as Sangam. And where this assemblies used to be held, this was held in Madurai. And it is one of the earliest work of Tamil literature. And it was composed around 2300 years. All right, moving on. So we have just looked at villages. Let's look at cities. Okay. We will be looking at stories, who were all the travelers who came and gave the account. We will be looking at cultures and what we have found in the archaeology. So first of all, stories. So Jatakas were the stories that were composed by the ordinary people. However, it was written down and it was preserved by the Buddhist monks. Okay. And there are some other evidence also from which we can know about or we can find about the city. So there was sculpture, and these sculptures actually depicted the lives of towns, villages, and forests. And these were used to decorate railings, pillars, and gateways of buildings where people visit. Okay, so cities began emerging around 2500 years ago. And we know from the previous chapters that there were Mahajanpas. What are Mahajanpas? So there were small Janpas, and these Janpas became, some of the Janpas became very powerful over the period of time, and then they became Mahajanpas. And these Mahajanpas had their own capital cities. Okay. So, and we also know from the previous chapters that these Mahajanpas had their own fortifications wall. Kings used to build this fortified walls because of several reasons. One, to protect the people. Two, to showcase or to show off that how rich they are. And also three, because it was easier to control the people. Okay, I hope it's clear. And there were ceramic rings have also been found, and these ceramic rings have been arranged on one on top of the other. Okay, and the usage of these ring wells are used as drains and garbage or dump. Okay, here you can see the picture of it. So here is a ring well that was found in Delhi. Okay, and this was the system of drain. Okay, and we have hardly any evidence of the homes of the ordinary people, and we do not find any palaces or markets. Maybe they were made up of wood or mud brick or thatches, and that is why they may not have been survived. Okay, and there were various travelers who came into the subcontinent, and they also give us account of the lives of the cities and villages. I hope you can remember from the previous chapter that one of the ambassadors who came into the court of Chandragupta Maurya was Megasthenes, and he also gave us account of how the king used to live and about the city of Patti. Okay, moving ahead. So here is one of these sculpture from Sachi, and this is a sculpture from Sachi, a site with stupa in Madhya Pradesh, and it is showing and it is depicting the scenes. Okay, moving ahead. So let's read one of the story about Varigaza, and Varigaza is actually the Greek name for Bharuch. Okay, so the gulf was very narrow at Varigaza. And since it was narrow, it was very hard to navigate those who were coming from the sea. And that is why the king used to employ only the skillful and experienced people to steer into the ship. Okay. So what were all the imports into Barry Gaza? Wine, copper, tin, lead, coral, topaz, clothes, gold, and silk. And what were all the exports from the town? It included plants from the Himalayas, ivory, agate, carnelian. I hope you remember from the Harappan time we have seen one red carnelian jewelry, okay, cotton, silk, and perfume. And people who came to the subcontinent, they brought special gifts for the king, okay. It included the vessels of silvers. They brought singing boys, beautiful women, fine wines and fine clothes as well. All right, moving ahead, coins. So today, in today's time also, if you want to know who is wealthy, and wealth is measured in terms of money. Okay. So in this time also, people start to measure the wealth, or wealth was measured in terms of coins. And archaeologists have found several thousands of coins belonging to this period. Okay. And earliest coins were used for about 500 years, and it had a punch mark. Okay, why it was called a punch mark? It was called punch mark because of a reason. First of all, let's talk about its shape. So it usually had a rectangular or sometimes square or round in shape, and it was either cut out of a metal sheet, or it was made out of a flattened metal globe. Okay, and these were not inscribed. Okay, but it was stamped with symbols using the dies or punches, and that is why they were called as punch marked coins. And these coins, they are found over most part of the subcontinent, and it remained in the circulation till early centuries. That is common. All right, moving ahead. So let's talk about cities and what all function that it played. So one of the important city was Mathura, and it was an important settlement for more than 2500 years. And why it was very important? Because it was located at the crossroad of two major routes of travel and trade, from the northwest to the east and from north to the south. And here in Mathura, huge fortifications have also been built around the city. And we can see also several shrines over here. Okay. And also, farmers and herders who lived in the adjoining areas, they provided food to the people who were living in the city. And Mathura is a center where fine sculptures are produced. Okay. And around 2000 years ago, it became even the capital of Kushan. Okay. So Mathura was a religious center for Buddhists, for Jains, and also for and it was a very important religious center for the worship of Krishna. And then there are inscriptions also that has been found. Okay, short inscriptions have been found where recording of gifts that were made by men, women, and several monasteries to the kings, or even the kings who made the you know gifts or gave the gifts, all has been recorded in the form of inscription, short inscription. Okay, let's talk about crafts and crafts person. Okay, so archaeological evidence for crafts have been found, and NBPW has been found, which is a very special, extremely fine kind of a pottery. So what is NBPW? NBPW is basically a hard wheel made metallic looking ware with a shiny black surface. Okay. What potter used to do is, potter will do will actually expose the earthenware to very high temperature in place. And because of the high temperature, it resulted into the blackening of its outer surface. And then a fine black slip was applied on it, which gave the pottery a mirror-like shape. Okay, and this NBPW was generally found in the northern part of the subcontinent, and it has been known from the text. Okay, there used to be a manufacture of clothes used to take place like in the famous centers like Varanasi and Madurai. Okay, and some of these craft persons and merchants, they formed their own associations known as shrenis. And these shrenis of craft people, they provided training to other people as well. And they procured raw material, and then they distributed the finished products. And shrenis of merchant also, they organized trade as well. And these shrenis of merchant, they also acted as banks. Just like today we have banks, they also served as banks, where the rich men and women, they did what? They deposited money, just like we do. We deposit money in the bank, and they invested. And when we deposit money in the bank, after a period of time, we get interest. In the similar manner, they also invested, and a part of interest was also returned. And they also used to support religious institutions such as monasteries. All right, moving ahead. So in Arthashastra, I hope you remember from the previous chapter, that Kautilya, okay, he wrote a book or an account called as Arthashastra, okay, where he gave all his ideas or the rules, okay, and in that book he actually described the rule of spinning and weaving, okay, how it can be done in the workshop under the supervision of special officials. So who were the people who used to spin and weave? So there were widows, young women who were differently abled, nuns, mothers of courtesans, retired women, servants of kings, also women who retired from service in temples. They all used to process wool, bark, cotton, hemp, and food. Okay, and these women they were being paid according to the quality and the quantity of work. Okay, and those women who were not allowed to leave their homes, what they did is they sent one of the servants, and that servant can go and bring the raw material and give it to them, and then they made a full, good, and then they distributed it. Okay, and also women were actually, if it is found that the superintendent is not behaving properly with them, that then that superintendent was even punished. Okay, and if a woman does not complete her work, then they were made to pay the fine, and also sometimes their thumbs were cut off. All right, moving on. So let's look at a place called Arikamedu. So Arikamedu is basically a coastal settlement where ships used to be unloaded. Okay, and it unloaded the goods from distant lands. And obviously, if you are unloading at a place, so you must have certain place of storage. So a warehouse has a massive brick structure has been found. So it is suggested that maybe it was a warehouse. Okay, so we have found that what were all the goods that used to be imported. So pottery from the Mediterranean regions, such as amphor, uh, and um, and and it was a tall double-handled jars that contained liquids such as wine or oil. There were stamped red glazed pottery also that were known as Aretine ware, and it was named after a city that is in Italy. And also a stamped mold, another kind of pottery was made locally, was also found. Roman lamps, glasswares, and have also been found at this site. Small tanks were also found, probably dyeing wax that were used to dye clothes. Plenty of evidence for making of beads from semi-precious stones and glasses. These all things have been found at this particular place. Okay, so let's look at what is happening in other parts of the world. So Rome is actually one of the oldest city in Europe. And when in Ganga Valley cities were emerging or developing, so Rome also cities were developing. Okay, at the same time. So Rome was actually the capital of one of the largest empires, and it was a very huge empire which spread across Europe, North Africa, West Asia. And Augustus was one of the most important emperor who ruled about 2000 years ago. And he said that earlier Rome was a city of brick, and he made this city the city of marble. And then the later rulers came and they built temples, they built palaces over here. They also built huge amphitheaters. What is amphitheater? It is basically an open arena, okay? And that is surrounded by tiers of seats, just like stadium where you go and watch cricket, okay? So there was tiers of seats where citizens could watch all kinds of shows. There were public baths as well, okay? And there were huge aqueducts also. Aqueduct is basically a channel to supply the water, and these were all built to bring water to the city, okay, for 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 bath purpose, for fountains, toilets, etc. So, and here is some of the important date that you have to remember from this particular chapter. So the earliest evidence of iron can be traced back up to 3000 years ago. However, its usage became more prevalent about 2500 years ago. The composition of Sanskrit literature happened around 2300 years ago. and the settlement in Arikamedu happened around 2200 and 1900 years ago. I hope it's clear. Thank you so much for listening to me very patiently. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, share it, and subscribe. Thank you so much.